Thank you. Okay, and next we're going to call Lena Francis.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
You just say your name and who you're with, okay?
My name is Lena Francis, and I'm from Angel Reach.
Okay.
And I want to give my opinion on the what improvements are needed to screening, assessment, training, and support of potential foster and kinship families. I just want to say that one thing that I've been adamant about that I don't really hear too much about is the background checks are fine, but what I want to see done are drug tests, because you can easily do a background check and the person can be clean and everything, but I believe that drug screenings and random visits should be put into place, because if you tell the foster parent or adoptive parent that, okay, well, your caseworker is coming this day, this time, it's a lot of time to get everything, as I say, in order. Okay, you go over here, you act like you're doing this. You go over here, you act like you're doing this, and make everything look perfect. See, the random visits to me will give a better view of how the situation really is and how that child really reacts to the foster parent or the adoptive parent. When I was growing up, what my adoptive mother did, she would keep me in a room and cut the lights off, completely pitch black, and I couldn't come out the room all day. I didn't eat. I couldn't drink anything. No restroom breaks, anything like that, all day. And mentally, these agencies, they don't know what happened, and it's like, how can you report that? Because you still, at the end of the day, have to go back home with that person. Mm-hmm. You got to wake up, you got to look at them, and it's scared. And like, what do you do? How does a child express that? How does a teenager express that? Who can you really tell without? How do people really understand? How can they get a grasp of that? And that's what goes on for the most part in most of these agencies, in adoptive families and foster care systems. Not all. I've seen plenty good ones, but for the most part, we're being abused, and it just hurts. And I want to see. I want people to be held accountable. It has to be a way for them to be held accountable for their actions, because mentally, not just physically. Physically, you can walk around and be fine, but mentally, when you're locked up like that, how do you socially interact? How do you make friends? How can you do that? And making friends and finding people to talk to will really help these kids. They have to know, and you have to believe that it has to be somebody out there that you can talk to. And when you feel like that, it's a lot of suicidal thoughts that run through these kids' mind. I've been there. It's been a few times where I've tried to hang myself and do those type of things, because I felt like there was no way out. There was no way out. These kids have to know that somebody cares. They have to know that somebody cares. I'm sorry, but
no, don't be sorry.
And these most of these families take the kids in, and they're not even paying their bills on time. They take these kids in, paint this perfect picture of themselves, and then when the door is shut and the caseworker leaves, all hell breaks loose.
I appreciate you having the courage to come forward and talk with us. How long have you been out of foster care?
It's been about a good year or two. and my mother did a lot of those things. And you don't necessarily have to be in CPS. It's a lot of people who adopt, and they put those kids through the same thing that those foster kids go through in the CPS system. A quote-unquote stable home doesn't mean that is mentally stable, is physically stable, emotionally stable.
So were you in an adoptive home then and not a foster care?
Yes, I became adopted a little bit before I turned 7 years old. From birth, from the moment I was pushed out of the womb, I was put in foster care. Never seen my birth mother, never seen my birth dad. So when I seen my adopted parents, they're all like that.
Okay. And 7 is very young. Do you have any idea who your placement agency was that helped with that adoption?
Not that I know of, but I know that I used to meet periodically with MHMRA.
Okay.
And my adopted mother would take me to those meetings, and that went on till I was about 10 years old.
Okay.
And then after that, it stopped.
A quick question for you. You had mentioned the random visits. I think actually that's a very good idea, and I understand exactly what you're trying to point out there, and that was why I was asking earlier our commissioner about that.
Yes.
But you mentioned drug testing for the visitors as well. Is that what I was hearing?
Yes, for the visitors and those who are looking to adopt and foster. Because if there's any cocaine, alcoholism, anything, I believe that should be grounds of disqualification as to their qualities of taking care of these kids.
Right. No, I agree there, but I guess let me rephrase my question. So if you're in a foster care situation and you had a family member coming to visit,
yes,
the kids in the foster care, have them
yes,
tested as well as what you're suggesting?
Yes, and background checks too, because there are a lot of, undercover sex offenders out here, and, kids are getting raped and molested, way too often than they should be.
And you had mentioned that you had some fear of retribution. You were, and other kids in the situation were hesitant to say anything to anybody that might be able to change things because you were afraid of what would happen when they left.
Yeah, and then the other thing is like, how can you understand that? And that's another thing. That's one of the biggest things for me was, how can you really understand where I'm coming from? You can just sit there and say, oh, well, she's lying. Okay, it can't really be that bad. That's what I heard. Every time I try to express myself and tell my story, it goes, oh, it can't be that bad.
So you did attempt to tell somebody?
Well, it can't be that bad. No, you'll be fine. You just exaggerating. It won't last. It won't last long. I had nightmares about my mother and the things that she did to me until I was 18 years old. I'm 20 years old.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. So when you talked about MHMR, was that here in Austin or was that somewhere else within the state?
No, somewhere else within the state.
Okay, what's
it was in Houston. Harris County. Okay. And they would call and send us letters in the mail, and we would go and meet and talk with, representatives. And then another thing that I wanted to point out was that, like, having one-on-one visits with the child without the foster or the adoptive parent present, because that can easily be manipulated, and the foster parent or the adoptive parent can make you say whatever you want to. I believe in order for the foster parent or the caseworker to really get a feel for what the child is going through, they have to sit down one-on-one with that child.
Right. So in your case, you're saying that if an inspector or the caseworker had come by to be able to talk with you by yourself?
Yes.
Okay. Members, any other questions?
Thank you for being here. I really do appreciate you sharing that insight. You seem to be doing very well despite things, and thankful for that.
Yes.
Really, there's to me, a couple things you hit on that I think make a lot of sense. The drug screen is kind of fun. Where my wife and I are going through the foster care,
yes,
getting approved for that, and come to think of it, the only thing I haven't done is gotten drug screened. And actually, I'm kind of going, yeah, that's really easy because you can't fake that. All the other stuff that I've filled out, you could fake all of that. Not that I have, by the way. But the vast majority of it is not you can fake.
easily say, yeah,
And
I
so
did that.
a drug screen and the random visits, to me, strike
Yes.
me as a great balance of, checking for people who are not telling the truth and yet
Yes.
not penalizing those who are there trying to do the right thing. And ultimately, there has to be some adults in the process that are doing a good job. You know what I mean? There have to be. If you don't have adults doing a good job, then the kids got no chance. And so,
Yes.
thanks.